Thank you, everyone, for joining our Just Communities for Arkansas Transformation webinar on challenges facing our transgender neighbors here in Arkansas. We're so happy that you joined us on this lovely Friday afternoon. It's sure to be a heartfelt and enlightening discussion. Thank you specifically to Park West Pharmacy and Gwendolyn Herzig for sponsoring this event. Again, we are going to have questions, an opportunity for questions at the end of the webinar. We're going to have about 10 to 15 minutes for questions. So please hold your questions to the end. If you need to write them down, feel free to do so, but we will not be jumping into the chat for questions until the end. If you would like to pin the panelists, feel free to do so. If you are not sure how to pin, there's 3 little dots beside their name, and it should give you an opportunity to pin. And that'll just allow you to see the panelists, who are Amber, Austin, Gwendolyn, and Sharon will be moderating. So I will kick it over to our fabulous moderator for this afternoon, Sharon Ann Downs. Sharon is a business development manager for Just Communities of Arkansas, and she is also a fabulous staff member of the UA Little Rock. And I will pass it over to Sharon. Sharon, take it away.
Thank you so much, Hillary. I'm so pleased to be with you all today for this important event. This is a topic that we've wanted to bring for a while, and I've got 3 good friends that we're have here today to share their experiences and talk about the trans experience here in Arkansas. I'm going to ask them each to tell you a little bit more about themselves so that I don't miss anything important. And let's see, let's start with Gwendolyn.
Hi, my name's Dr. Gwendolyn Page Herzig. I am a community pharmacy owner in West Little Rock. I own Park West Pharmacy. Good times. Also, I'm a clinical pharmacist for Healthy Connections. So I do a lot of clinical work, especially with the LGBTQ community, with a really good emphasis in transgender care. Other than that, shameless plug, I also own a Japanese anime store. I've been married to my high school sweetheart for 12 years, and we have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. So good times. My pronouns are she, her.
Thank you. Austin?
Hi, my name is Austin Tisdale. Thank you guys for having me. I am a transgender man, use pronouns he, him. I work as a licensed clinical social worker at Argenta Counseling and Wellness. I've been working as a therapist for about 6 years now. I graduated from Hendrix in 2014 and have made Central Arkansas my home. I have a wonderful fiance, and I stay involved in my community through Queer Collective, which is an organization really rallying for the LGBT community and their families to just have safe spaces to come, share meals together, and do different types of outreach that's really grassroots organization that's, based on our needs as a community.
Thank you so much. Amber?
Hi, my name is Amber. I am gender fluid. My pronouns are they, them. I am a multidisciplinary public health educator. And so those multiple disciplines are linguistics, French, and health promotion. And I also speak some Spanish. My primary focus within health promotion has been harm reduction, substance use and abuse. I've worked in clinical environments as well as with street outreach. And I tend to focus all of my work on people who need it, people in crisis, and people with, behaviors and choices that are not socially acceptable, but still need help.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and welcome to everyone. So the first question I'm going to ask, and we'll just kind of do a round robin. Can each of you share a little bit about your personal experiences as someone who's a member of the trans community, or in your experience working with trans members of the community in Arkansas? So Amber, do you want to go first?
Just like general experiences. Okay. So I do a lot of I fulfill my need for community, belonging, activism. A lot of that time is spent with intransitive. And something that I have spotted in my time volunteering, being around, supporting, attending events really is that we're kind of hurting ourselves to take care of ourselves and each other. The work is demanding. It is never ending. And while I see so much love and support and solidarity, and it really fills up my reserves for proceeding in the work, the fact of the matter is so many of us really go home and are exhausted with trying to fill these gaps. And it's the thing that hurts, about fighting for rights all the time. It's just like, okay, and we also go home and are struggling with basic necessities. So a little drab, but it's one of those things that I think isn't really talked about enough.
Okay, thank you. Gwendolyn?
Yeah, no, I like to speak to like the experiences of like my patients when they came in, because I feel like generally everyone has their own pathway forward in their life, but there's some general themes that you see, especially like newbie transgender-ish people coming in. They're awfully scared, timid. There's a lot going on in their life. There's a lot of big changes that they're making, and they're really looking for some support. And so that's just a really scary time for them. Then, you go in and maybe like a year to 2 years in, they're finding their feet, whatnot. They're a lot more confident. They're kind of feeling like what their heart really is and like figuring out who they are, which is great. And then you get your older trans people who have been in the game for quite some time, and they just are who they are. It's great. It's enlightening to see kind of like the whole spectrum of like where people start and where they can go. And so especially if people have, keep at it, have the right resources, and and that's the hard part too, is finding the right resources to get. Luckily there is in Transdiv, and there is the Queer Collective, and there's a lot of other places out there that can provide the linkage to care or the resources needed, but still, it's just not enough. We it would be nice if we had a lot more support out there, but we do what we can.
Thank you. I did want to point out that the resources that we talk about in the webinar today, we will be sending out to everyone who signed up. So feel free to take copious notes, but we will also send it to you. You can just relax and listen if you'd like. Austin.
So definitely with starting with my personal experience and working into what I see as a clinician. When I figured out that, hey, I'm actually a man, there is this sort of fear. How am I going to get by? Even if, and working at the same place that I had been working at previously when I was living as a woman and coming out, even though the workplace, had, gender identity protected. And I worked in, to keep all the details out, a customer service type of job. And and I changed my name to my chosen name, Austin, from a previous name. One of the customers took it upon themselves on my little nameplate to put a Post-it note with, and in the community, we talk about the name that we were given at birth as a dead name. The name that was assigned to me when I was born as female, they took it upon themselves to put a Post-it note over my chosen name. And that was a very difficult experience. And there was even some stuff got around to me about some of my coworkers talking about me. And even that experience that I had, as difficult and uncomfortable as it was, is very mild compared to what other people have faced. Definitely what helped me was community and access to resources. And as a clinician, the biggest need that we have in Arkansas is with facing transgender issues. It's not just one thing. It's not just access to medication. It's not just access to therapy. There are legal issues, economic issues, housing issues, job opportunities. And there is this big lack of a one-stop shop, and everything is very complex, even on health and healthcare. you have to really go out and seek who are the providers that are going to validate me. Who am I safe to go talk to about these things? And a lot of people, they would rather not, they're too scared to go to the doctor. Or if they have, some sort of issue related to like a cold or something, well, I can't go to a PCP. I have to go to my gender doctor. And a lot of what I'm seeing is the biggest impact, especially for all transgender people, but especially for transgender people in Arkansas, is where do I go to get some of these other needs met? Because it's usually a lot of things that are tied up in a lot of different systems. And then, two, the biggest piece is the economic piece, right? If, again, with gender dysphoria, yes, coping skills are great, but at the same time, needing surgeries. Even in my experience seeking surgeries, thankfully I had a surgeon in a surgeon's office who knew how to fight my insurance company, but it was a big fight. It was covered, then it wasn't, appeals process and hearing 5 or 6 different things. And I was discouraged and frustrated and anxious. And pretty much what I do all day is teach people how to navigate systems. And even with that knowledge and education and privilege that I have, I still struggled with that. And there's a lot of people who are living at or below the poverty line, people who they really need therapy, but even with copays can't afford it, or they have to choose between bills. And how am I going to get to where I need to be to feel comfortable in my body when there's laws saying that, minors, but it affects adults too. I can't get the type of healthcare and treatment that I need. And again, with the economic piece, right? Yes, I have health insurance with my job, but how long am I going to keep this job? Right? Having to make decisions of, okay, how am I going to get, like Amber said, my basic necessities? If my housing is tied to a family member, I have to make sure that they don't know, while also I'm in this constant fight or flight with the distress from the gender dysphoria. So it's a lot of complex issues. And part of why I am where I am today is because I've had access to resources. I haven't always had supportive family members, but I've had supportive friends. And especially now, post-COVID, the huge loneliness epidemic. How do I even go and find community if I'm in the city? That's definitely easier, better. But what if I'm in rural Arkansas? Or what if I'm not safe to be myself because of physical violence or harassment or violence against, my family members or my kids or even my job? So it's very muddled, and, the resources can be scarce at times. And, there's a lack of how do we access each other?
Thank you. Thank you. I wonder if the other 2 panelists would like to jump in on that conversation about challenges that you faced or witnessed with people that you work with in navigating healthcare, both physical healthcare and mental healthcare.
Yeah. Do you mind, Gwen?
Yeah, no, I can definitely talk about the healthcare side of it. Navigating healthcare is ridiculous. When I first started coming out 4 years ago, and I, as a doctor of pharmacy and like someone who's like deals with insurance and healthcare, trying to navigate like where to start, where to go, like what to do is ridiculous. It gets to the point where you're like digging through like Reddit, dark Reddit, like deep Reddit, trying to figure out what do I need to be on? What are my appropriate levels? Where do I go? And I'm like, this is ridiculous. And so, I've really, even with the pharmacy and whatnot, I've kind of really made it my personal mission to make sure people don't run into roadblocks when it comes to find care. Luckily in Arkansas now, we have some very defined practitioners that I can send people to, whether if it's at UAMS, whether if it's Diversity Health, whether it's Planned Parenthood, whether if it's Healthy Connections, so on and so forth. But I really feel like 4 years ago, if you would have asked me, I would have been like, well, I think there's UAMS. and then there's maybe Planned Parenthood. And it's like, but our options have obviously they've grown, but still, even when you say, oh, we have 4 or 5 providers that are local, that's still not a great vast amount of providers, even though I greatly appreciate my providers. But that being said, yeah, no, the healthcare portion of it is, and speaking what Austin said too, when it comes down to like urgent care needs or PCP needs, it's like your gender doctor who's doing a hormone shouldn't be like the one that's triaging for everything, because that's the only person that they feel safe going to. But yeah, granted, especially within the first 2 years of transitioning, if I needed to go to the ER, I would have to be like near death or unconscious. Luckily, that never happened. But, that being said, I'm just like, I don't even want to risk going there. I don't want to get misgendered. I don't want to have to explain things. I don't want to be looked at as like a spectacle. And so, yeah, no, it's just the healthcare setting it's really hard. But, that being said, there's a lot of PCPs out there that are very gender affirming. Maybe not necessarily they're going to be prescribing hormones, because they still, there's some thoughts about that, whether it's like, oh, they feel like an endocrinologist should take over that. That's a different discussion for a different time. But there are a lot of good PCPs out there that definitely want to just take care of their patients that are outside just the gender realm of things. So,
thank you. Amber, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, if I could chime in on a two-pronged approach. So first, from lived experience, I personally broke up with all mental health treatment in February of this year after 15 years comprehensively. So I did put a lot of work in and make that decision very informed, and had the privilege of having 15 years of care. But I broke up with it because I was tired of the state having the right for the rest of my life to against my will, take me off of medication. I did not want to be in forced withdrawal by the state because I lost employment due to workplace discrimination that I couldn't fight back because they're the same race and age as me. That happened, by the way. It's not discrimination if they're the same race, apparently. So I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I feel confident in my skill set. I feel confident that I've gotten what I can out of talk therapy. I feel confident, and this is very subjective, that I'm doing more work than my meds right now. And I don't want to do this anymore, because I don't like that when I lose my job, I maybe have to go into withdrawal from very serious medications, including anti-psychs. It's really dangerous to just stop taking anti-psychs. For most people, it should have been dangerous for me, but I couldn't do it anymore. So to say that it has impacted me is an understatement. I just broke up and said no more. But that's just not an option for everybody. And that doesn't help people who've never accessed it at all. It's not fair to say, like, I made it without it. Like, okay, after 15 years of all the
Right.
meds and all the diagnoses and all the different models and methodologies. So that's not something that's not a good healthcare policy. Figure it out, And then the second thing I want to speak to is also kind of what Gwen mentioned here, where we're looking at DIY healthcare. I come from a harm reduction background, so you can imagine what I'm going to address. Opioids, a lot of people are finding that opioids were the solution for that person, not the problem. And that blows people's minds, but it's like, this person had chronic pain. This person maybe was experiencing gender dysphoria. This person had been excommunicated from the community, experiencing deep trauma, was trying to figure out how to stimulate themselves in an appropriate way, to regulate themselves, to complete daily living activities and such. And you can't get healthcare because maybe you're queer, because maybe someone doesn't like your dad in a small town, because, all these little issues that build up a big anxiety around seeking any healthcare. And so then underground black market healthcare of all varieties becomes much more appealing. It's more accessible, less barriers. People take you more seriously. Like one was saying, the reason Reddit is such a good source is because people are just for real. They're not walking you in circles with platitudes and any of that. They're saying, this is the real risk of doing something like this. This is what we need to do. And that's just so dangerous, and it's not fair. It's not fair that a whole group of people have to reinvent the wheel when we have what we need. Like, the medicines have been made. There are treatment modalities for this condition. You can do something about this experience. But these persistent policies really deter people from seeking even just basic care, dental care, wound care. I mean, things that don't include your behavior at all, people still don't want to seek care for that because the stigma is so big and so material for them. It's not just abstract.
Thank you. So what do you think healthcare providers in Arkansas could do to better support trans patients? I'm thinking specifically in areas outside of the metropolitan area of Little Rock, because there's so many small communities. What could care providers do to make it a more welcoming space?
So one thing I would encourage all healthcare providers, whether it's physical health, mental health, is if you are culturally competent with LGBT patients, and definitely if you feel like you want to help, but you lack cultural competence, definitely engage in some trainings. There's all types of trainings available to you and resources and ways that you can engage with people's lived experience. I would definitely start there for anybody that's seeking care. If you, and whether it's Psychology Today or within your bio as if you're a PCP or a psychiatrist, saying that, I support or I work with LGBT clients, that's going to be, okay, this person is safe, right? This person I can get help from, even if you're a dentist, right? Because again, right, of the mistrust from lived experience of being discriminated against in any healthcare setting, I have to know that you're safe before I seek help from you. Or is it going to make it 20 times worse if I'm trying to get a cavity being filled and you're being inappropriate with me, to say the least? So I would definitely start there. If you are in a rural space, especially, market yourself, make yourself known to any local LGBT organizations, right? With social media like Reddit and online, that's, the first thing that people go to find resources nowadays, especially in underserved communities. So online outreach and, gain some, whatever continuing edge you can about cultural competency. I think that are two good ways to start.
Okay, thank you.
I always preach that there's 4 things that a business, a clinic, a practitioner, pretty much it can be applied to any setting. A, use someone's preferred pronouns. It's easy. If it's she, her, they, them, he, him. I mean, we're just talking about basic pronouns. We're not even getting into neo pronouns. Pronouns, easy. Preferred name. If someone wants to go by Alexis and not Alex, super easy. Do that. Makes them more comfortable. Third thing is show some sort of pride. Our community, or pretty much anyone in the LGBT community, are pros at finding that rainbow flag or any flag that is with them. I'm not saying we have to have a big old banner that's a rainbow, but even a small lapel pin can provide so much comfort and ease, knowing that I don't have to read the practitioner's mind or the person who's selling me something's mind, whether if they agree or I'm going to get discriminated upon. And as a clinician, you're going to get so much more information out of that patient, setting them at ease with a small show of respect with a pride flag, that it's amazing. And the 4th thing is to educate yourself. Don't expect the patient to educate you. Especially with early people who are going through transition, it's like they're already trying to figure out things for themselves. They don't have all the answers. They're trying to figure out the answers for themselves. And so just to expect a patient to start educating you on everything that you probably need to know, that's silly. So attending things like this, or attending workshops or any type of CE dealing with transgender care is greatly appreciated.
Awesome. Thank you all. I want to get into a little bit more about mental health.
Sorry,
sorry.
Sharon. Yeah, if I could respond to that one real quick.
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry, I'll try to be quick. I wanted to maybe pull the frame out just a little bit more. I think definitely we need to have material strategies. That's what makes behavior change possible, is having some kind of something to grab onto. But I think it's also important at this junction before the upcoming election, that we also pull the frame out a little bit on what's going on here with providers and transphobia and homophobia and policies and schools and kids. And I think providers really need to take a moment to seriously reflect on how social justice is showing up in their roles, is or isn't. I think Austin and Gwen here clearly are aligned in social justice in what they do, but that's not the case for all providers. A lot of medical people don't think social justice belongs in medicine. They don't think they should bother with social justice issues, that it just needs to be figured out by a different discipline, essentially. And so that trickles down to the de facto situation where providers feel a sense of intimidation for going out of the expected protocol or procedure, bringing up new ideas, challenging people who are absolutely being transphobic. Like there's an attending fear and intimidation there from repercussion. And so while it's important to definitely do the things you need to do to respect other people, it's also important to figure out where you're aligned. What is important to you? Why are you in medicine? If it's not to provide help and support to people who are being discriminated and excluded. And I think that's, what I wanted to call to. Sorry.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. When I think about mental health, I'm a little conflicted in saying this, but we do know that there's a lot of mental health and depression and anxiety with trans youth. And I want to kind of decouple the idea that someone who's trans and mental health issues are inextricably linked. They're not linked by just the fact of being trans, but it's all of how society responds to these youth and adults that triggers things like depression and anxiety. But it's an epidemic. Statistics will show that. So how can we create more supportive environments for youth, especially those who may be struggling with depression and anxiety? I don't know who would like to go first on this.
I can.
I'll go first. No, go ahead.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Sorry, there's a delay.
Mine focusing on more of like a healthcare setting. It's really a team approach when it comes down to transgender youth. Too many times is it thought about like treating a transgender youth as just one rogue physician and like we're gonna go that route, and it's just like then it's surgery the next day, and I'm like, there's so many things that are wrong with that, and so many actual barriers that are in place for that it's not even funny. But and for transgender youth, the idea approach is a team building experience with all the parents on board, with the therapist on board, with the pediatrician on board, with someone who's well versed in gender psychology on board, and there's so many facets. So it's definitely a team approach. And when it comes to like the mental health side, it's just being there, being open, being talked to. A lot of it for kids is just social transitioning. It's not even, doesn't have anything to do with like hormones or surgeries, because those things are generally not even on the table. And when we talk about puberty suppression all the time, but puberty suppression is only effective if it's catches puberty before it happens. If a kid's already in Tanner 3, Tanner 4 within puberty suppression really is not going to do anything, because puberty is already done its work. It's already happened for the most part. And so it just kind of really sucks. So there's just a lot of like obviously tons of misinformation out there and a lot of scare tactics over trans youth that even just that's just not needed, and it's just that much more hurtful for them.
Amber, did you have something?
Yeah. So I find that, the conversations around social justice for any group really focus on what do we do to adjust for the risk of disproportionate discrimination? What do we do for this special population, right? Unfortunately, that runs the risk of othering a group of people and then essentially designating their needs as special. As in, trans youth have special needs that are not like the needs of other youth, when that's not true. Cis children struggle with the same social difficulties in transitional periods of school. Middle school is trash. It's a terrible place to be. Cis children experience anxiety and depression, behavioral issues, all of these things. And so I feel like something that's important is that we really challenge this idea that trans youth needs something so special, and we have to pool in all our resources to reinvent the wheel here, when in reality, trans youth are also youth. They're also children. Children need healthcare. Children need to belong. Children need receptive, safe adults around them. Children need space to grow and be awkward. And some children who are not trans also need gender affirming care. And that's redundant for so many people who are already in the field and know these things, but it's something that we have to keep announcing. And so something that I think is really important is that we pivot to a perspective of solidarity, which is to say that, yes, the resources should be allocated to those most directly and severely impacted, but that in terms of advocacy, we need to be talking about how this is not a special interest issue. This is not a special needs group. We all need dignity and access to a full life. It's about all of us, and we have seen transphobia intersect with regressive women's health, and cis women are impacted. And that's something we have to keep saying because we keep treating it like a special interest, and it's just not.
Thank you. I was thinking about there are state legislatures all around the country who for a few years now have had a lot of bills that are anti-trans, and too many to go into in terms of what's been tried and passed and failed here in Arkansas. But I wonder if any of you want to speak to the impact of having these bills, whether they pass or not, the impact of these on the trans community psyche and how people treat trans people based on these efforts at getting these different legislations passed.
This sounds like a perfect question for Austin. I saw you go for it, Austin.
Yes.
Get it.
So, what I will say is, so with, one way that we look at mental health is suicidality, right? And what suicidality means is suicidal thoughts, whether that's suicidal thoughts, with a plan, or even just, I don't really mind if I didn't wake up tomorrow, writing goodbye letters, making preparations, all the way up to intense. It's a group of symptoms. And what we know from data, regardless of if the bill is passed or not, every time that there is an anti-trans bill on, some sort of state or national docket, when those bills come up, and whether it's definitely worse when they're passed, we see increased markers for suicidality among transgender people. We see this in ways of increased calls to suicide hotlines, increased hospitalizations for suicidal thoughts and or behaviors, even symptoms like self-injurious behavior, cutting, burning, etc. So absolutely it does impact, because when you're already experiencing transphobia in, whether it's from microaggressions to the big things, you're experiencing bullying at home, that hopelessness and there's no way out and things are just going to get worse and I'm never going to be able to be myself and be comfortable in my own skin and be respected, that increases that suicidality if it's already there. And on the flip side of, okay, how do we support transgender youth? Even for transgender youth, right, regardless of socioeconomic status, or even if they have unsupportive parents or whoever's raising them at home, if they have one supportive adult, it significantly reduces the rate of suicidality. So absolutely of going against things like the LEARNS Act, which is incredibly discriminatory. And it actually, like Amber was saying, it negatively affects cisgender people as well, where teachers are legally not allowed to call a student by their name unless it's on their birth certificate. So even if they've been John their whole life, but their first name is Chris, they can't go by John, right? And it was targeted for transgender youth. And the biggest thing for educators and parents, which, by the way, the parent would have to write in a letter saying, okay, this is the name, to be called, and these are the pronouns if it's something different than the birth certificate. But how are parents going to have access to that information if it's not widely spread and we don't have this one-stop shop? But for educators or other adults who work with you to be able to advocate for that youth, like, no, like, their name is not John, it's Jane, right? And correcting other adults, a lot of adults, they don't show support because they're scared of the legal repercussions. However, you have to show up for kids because that's suicide prevention.
So it sounds like teachers have to get creative about how they can show up for their kids.
Yes, absolutely. And even
to not step on any lines.
Yes, and even informing parents. And again, a lot of teachers don't know that about the letter, but teachers having more access to that kind of information, informing, if you're in a position where you work with a lot of parents, informing them about, what are the most recent laws, getting in touch with the ACLU, what options do I have? Because at the end of the day, right, the transgender youth, right, because everything happens in regards to power dynamics, the transgender youth are the most targeted, because youth in general, right, have less rights under the government. There have been, laws against transgender adults, absolutely, but youth are most vulnerable, and the idea is, oh, we're doing it for the kids. We're harming kids for the kids' sake, and we are engaging in tactics that we know are going to lead to more deaths for the youth and more psychological distress. And so that's among, again, who among the transgender population it's not a monolith, but for youth, stepping up and being bold in your support is going to save that kid's life.
Thank you.
If I could speak a little bit to some of the emotional outcome of having the nation be at war over your entire personhood. So something we know about chronic stress is that it kills. It impacts your sleep. And we know that sleep issues increase your risk for later in life cognitive issues like dementia and Alzheimer's. And so what we're doing with these policies, whether they pass or not, we are still contending with their personhood on a daily basis. And that makes someone literally crazy. It takes the stability out of your worldview. You don't know what to think about anybody. You don't know how to respond to any situation. It could be fine. It could be bad. And that kind of disorganized expectation from your external folks, school, family, and stuff really destabilizes your ability to just be present at all, like to just be here, to have a job, to go to class, to call for an appointment. We're talking about severe chronic dissociation, freeze states. And it takes more years to come out of that the longer you're in that. So it's hard to even quantify or imagine what that looks like. And so we try to set off the alarm like, this is suicide prevention. This is chronic cardiac distress prevention, or, that's not a word, sorry, cardiac health problem prevention. But it's like we just can't grasp how big it is that someone with a brain so underdeveloped, well, appropriately for their age, right? But compared to adulthood, is being put under existential stress. Not just people in my life are unreasonable, but the entire world is unreasonable. Nothing is real. There are no protections. That's a tough place to exist in, and then also maintain school attendance and have hobbies and be a good person. We're asking an immense amount of all children, and especially children whose identity we're saying might not be real.
Yeah. Gwendolyn, did you have anything?
No, I feel like they pretty much hit it. I mean, I feel like, just on a side note, personally, I feel like I hit a point where I just get legislation fatigue. I feel at the beginning, I'm like high alert, like, oh my gosh, Lord save us. And then it's like at the end of it, I'm just like, what? Oh, there's another one. There's a new bill. I'm like, okay, what is it? What is it now? And so I don't know. It's sad. That's what it is. I generally tell all my providers, anyone like, hey, legislative session's about to start up. Let's make sure we check in on with all of our patients' anxiety and depression. It's very much real. Let's make sure we, check in with everyone. And so, yeah, it's just high alert at the time. But I feel like legislation fatigue is it's definitely a thing. So
Thanks. Hillary, did we have any questions from the audience yet?
Well, I was going to open it up. So thank y'all so much. And we're going to just, at this time, we have about 15 minutes left, see if anyone has questions. We are going to stop our recording right now just to protect all the people who might want to ask a question but don't want to be on recording. So we're going to pause that. But if you have a question, feel free to go ahead and put it in the chat and we'll just give it a couple of minutes there. And let me just